Okay, and this is the rest of the summer review number 1. This is number 14. And you can see we just have another complex fraction. And we've got x plus 3, the square root of x plus 3, and the square root of x. These again are relatively prime, so that's my LCD. So I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by the square root of x times the square root of x plus 3. In the first term, these square root of x plus 3's cancel, so I've got the square root of x. And then here, the second term, square roots of x cancel, I've got the square root of x plus 3. And in the bottom, I just have 3 times square root of x and the square root of x plus 3. And that's it. There's not much else I can do, so we just have x greater than 0 because we can't have 0 or a negative number under the radical. If x is greater than 0, that'll be okay. So that was pretty straightforward. Not too much we could do with that. Okay, the next one, number 15, I think what we want to do on these was we wanted to rationalize the numerators on these. It's not a complex fraction, so these we had to rationalize the numerator. Okay, so in order to rationalize the denominator, remember we would multiply by the conjugate. If we had complex numbers, or we had radicals in a binomial, the way we would rationalize the denominator is multiply by the conjugate. Well, that's the same way you rationalize the numerator. And sometimes you do have to rationalize the numerator, not the denominator. You don't worry about the denominator, you're worried about the top, believe it or not. So we just multiply the top and the bottom of this fraction by the conjugate of the numerator. And that's going to take care of the numerator. We're not worried about the denominator. So when we do this, remember this is like a minus b times a plus b is just a squared minus b squared from Algebra 1, the difference of perfect squares. So I just take the difference of the squares of these. And what that does is that makes that x plus 5 minus x. And that gets rid of the radicals, so I've rationalized the numerator. And in the bottom I just have this, and I'm not worried about the bottom. Just worried about the numerator. And the x's cancel, so there we go. And that's all we want to do, and we didn't really worry about restrictions on the domain, although x greater than 0 would probably do it for that. Okay. Again, when I simplify these, the x's cancel, so I would just have 5 over that. That cancel, that gives me 1, so those aren't too bad. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Remember, just multiply the top and the bottom by the conjugate of the numerator. Number 16 was another rationalize the numerator. So again, we had the square root of x plus 7 minus the square root of x over 7, so I just multiply the top and the bottom by the conjugate of that. Okay. So instead of negative, we got positive. And then when we square those, we get this squared, which is just x plus 7 minus x. And on the bottom, we just have 7 times that. And again, the x's cancel, so I've got 7 over 7 times the conjugate in reality. The 7's cancel, so I just have 1 over the square root of x plus 7 plus the square root of x. So again, not too difficult. Number 17, a little more complicated because we've got a little bit more worked out here, so we've got some common factors because this is a difference of perfect squares. But again, it's real easy to know what to do because we just look at the numerator. What's the conjugate of the numerator? The square root of x minus the square root of y. So that's what we multiply the top and the bottom by. And when we do this, remember that's just going to be x minus y in the top. And then if I factor x squared minus y squared, I know that this is the difference of perfect squares. So this factors to be x plus y times x minus y. And then I've got still have my conjugate factor over here. But the nice thing is I can cancel this x minus y with that x minus y. And I just have 1 on the top, and there's your answer. I'll move that over for you a little bit. So again, this is just like times 1. I can think of that times 1. Cancel those, so I have 1 on the top. Okay, the last one, number 18. And if you download these videos and you keep these, you're going to see this when we get into derivatives. You're going to see problems like this because these are kind of actually the algebraic parts of some of our calculus, and they're just kind of isolated so we can develop these algebra skills. So when you keep these and you go back and you see, I saw that before because there's a little bit more to it, then you're going to see how important this stuff is and why we're kind of reviewing it right now. So again, we just have to multiply the top and the bottom by the conjugate of the numerator, so it's the same thing except opposite sign. And then when I multiply these out, I get x plus h minus x on the top. And on the bottom, I've got h times this binomial. And again, I'm not worried about the bottom, just the top. The x's cancel. So now I've got h over this, the conjugate. And the h's cancel, so that just becomes 1, and there's your answer. I know some of you guys don't like to show work. I show all the little steps. I even use colors so it's easier for you to see what's going on. That's not a bad thing to do to help you with this algebra, so I hope it makes sense. Okay. Again, if you have any questions, please email me. Be happy to address any issues you have.